This is the Unscripted Podcast.
All right, everybody, we're back.
Back in the saddle.
Back in the saddle. Your saddle looks different than mine now, Bob.
Absolutely. You know, we had enough issues as it was when it come to shooting a podcast, and now we're trying to do it 6 hours away from each other.
Well, you know, ain't it a blessing that technology taught us that, number one, that we're real stupid, that our kids are smarter than we are, and number two, that there's probably a way that we can figure this out if we really try hard.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to say thanks to our listeners for being patient with us. There's obviously been a change, and me and my family are back up in Tennessee. We left KW on great terms and such good terms that we're going to try to keep this podcast going. And it was one of the big things that we wanted to do, but we had an opportunity to come back to Tennessee and work with a church in Winchester, and so that's what we're doing.
And you know, that's one of the blessings of our congregation here at KW is that, you know, the love, the blessing of growing, and now you spent the years here, and now you can go back home with kind of your tank full and recharged. You know,
absolutely. And it's crazy how much I grew. I mean, I went down there to try to grow the church, help grow the church at KW, and what it ended up doing is it ended up growing me. And of course, there's other people that grew in the process, and it's a blessing. And
I'm one of them. I mean, I'll tell you, this was a unique polishing the pulpit for me this year. And, I've been speaking there for, I don't know, probably 10 years. And
we all know, don't we, Ben, how big Chris is.
Right, exactly.
Some preachers just really want to try to go speak and polishing the pulpit once, and Chris has been doing it for 10 years now.
Let me finish my statement. What I meant by that was that, I would go year after year after year, and you realize, you loved it. You loved to be able to talk about those things. You love to be able to have these kind of charges to talk about, and I'm thankful for those. But I really noticed something this year, and it's funny because I just got the pictures today of like your memories or whatever on your shows up on your phone, and so I was looking back at the memories today, and today was the day that we put our house on the market. And so I was taking the pictures, no. It was the day that the home inspector came, and looked at it because we had sold our house. That's what it was. The home inspector had came, and we had sold our house in Virginia, and they were, like, well, what about this and what about that? And so I was just taking pictures of, like, how they my house was new. I mean, it wasn't, but they got to find something.
Nitpick everything.
Well, if they don't, then people's going to be mad. Like, why did I pay that $300 or $400 for? And so I was just like taking the pictures of the little pipe that was the gutter that was misaligned. Let me move this over here. Little stupid stuff like that, and send it back to them. And I got to polishing the pulpit this year, and I was in the big main hall room there, and we're having this meeting, and you just kind of have these moments where you realize something really powerful, and you don't realize it till it's kind of like growing up. You don't tell stories about growing up until you're done growing up, and when you're growing up, you're just doing it. You're just kind of like, well, we got to go do this, we got to do that. This is this event that happened, and that's this event that happened, and then I got to polishing the pulpit this year, and they'd given me, one of the topics they gave me was how to increase attendance in your congregation and engage the community. And that was supposed to be like a 2-part lesson. Like I was going to do half, like maybe I would do half about how to increase attendance, and then, Bob would do half about how to increase attendance, is the way they'll do them sometimes. And they got it all mixed up, and they're like, okay, can you do these two together in the big room? And I was like, yes, but in my mind, I was like, in order to do that, I was already going to sidestep this thing about how to increase attendance in your congregation, because while that's all well and fine, that's good to have people there. It makes you feel better about having people. Really and truly.
How about increasing
participation,
the attendees?
Yeah, that's what I did.
Their faith.
Yeah, I said, okay, when I got up on the stage, and you see all the directors there, and you just say, guys, I appreciate the topic that you gave me, but That's just not what we need to talk about. And so I'm going to sidestep that, and we're going to talk about something a little bit different. Now, I hope that you'll understand the reason why we're going to have this conversation is that, your numbers board is a flawed metrics sometimes.
Right.
And so, I realized something, and I said it to the crowd, and, you realize that when I got here, I didn't know it, but I was spiritually starved. And, you just kind of get your cup full, and so you realize it's you see how important it is then to be about doing these things, how important it is to get back. And I said, listen, I hear you guys.
Saying whenever you got back to PTP, you were spiritually starved.
Yeah, when I come to KW originally, I didn't realize how starved I was. Yeah. I mean, I came within.
I didn't know what you meant by here. If that here was KW.
Yeah, here at KW. I'm sorry. I came here thinking it's like when you go visit somebody in the hospital, right?
Yeah.
Like Brother Gene is in the hospital, one of our members, and he's really struggling. And I took the first day. You go and you have the conversation, and they're like, the normal things. This is what's going on. This procedure. This, just the things they're kind of giving you an update, and then. But I went to go see him, and he looked at me, and he was like, "Well, this is the end of my days now," and then they look away. They start looking at the wall. They're talking to themselves then, and not talking to you. I took care of my kids, and and he says, there's this little nurse girl that I was talking to, and I just want her to go to heaven so bad. Is there anything that we can do? Do you have something that I can give her that won't complicate things, but will certainly help her get a little closer to the Lord? And I made it a point to come back the next day. I was like, I'm going to come back the next day. And I brought my boys with me. And Gene was like holding up his arms. He's like, look at these flabby arms, and he's like, this is what the end of life looks like, boys, but there is nothing more important than heaven.
Yeah.
And you can't buy those things, right? You just can't buy those things and those kind of conversations. And I'm squalling, your boys, they're looking at you because it's like, Daddy's squalling. It's kind of awkward now, but you realize how important what he's saying to him is. And so I realized that, going to visit people, for example, I'm going to try to fill them up and make them feel better. But so often I come away just, charged, and
oh yeah, and there's a real blessing when you look at the book of James when it says pure and undefiled religion is to visit widows and orphans in their time of need. And I just got finished doing some marriage counseling, pre-marriage counseling with a couple up here, and really had never met them before, and it was through a third party thing, and the guy wasn't even, when we started the counseling, he wasn't even a believer in God. I think he might have been agnostic, but by the end of God's word working on him for 3 or 4 Bible studies, because I'm not going to marry somebody unless we do the pre-marriage counseling. And anyways, by the time it rolls around, he's committing to living together as God commanded. And that's a blanket statement when it comes to your marriage vows. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to live together with you the way that God commanded. Well, there's a whole lot with that, but nevertheless, when you think about, marriage and you think about, what you're going to do, I try to incorporate the book of James, and there's some bulletproof marriage things all from James chapter 1. And one of those is whenever I encourage people, whenever they're struggling in their marriage, you go visit a widow or go visit an orphan, because those two will put things into perspective for you in your life. And you don't realize it. They bring things right back around. Yeah, that's the thing, is like you don't realize it until, you kind of go through this process, as it were. And that's you're mad at each other, and then you go visit a widow, and she's talking about how much she misses her husband, how she wishes she could have one more. Changed his bedpan for 5 years or something like that. Right. And y'all are fighting over where the peanut butter goes, and so how'd you know that's what we were fighting about?
Courtney messaged me and said, "Do you think it's all right to put the peanut butter here?" But you realize that it's like I said, you don't realize these things until after the fact. And I told the guys there, I was like, I hear you say things like, "I wish that we could just take everybody here and start our own little town or community or whatever." While I get the principle behind it, what a blessing it'd be to be around.
There's too much talent.
And you're that's right. You're consolidating your effort, and that was never God's plan. Now, granted, what He wanted you to do was saturate your area that you're at, wherever you're at, and make that kind of people go and make disciples. And
right.
But I said it, I try to be not very abrasive about it. But the reason why you're saying those things is because you're spiritually starved, and so it's a blessing, that when you kind of get filled up, as it were, and you get to that point that you're like, all right, I can do this now. It's not as big a challenge as I thought it was going to be. And it's one of those things that you realize after, like I said, like you grow up, you don't realize you've grown up until you're done doing it.
Yeah. Well, and that was such a blessing of getting you to come to KW was while there was some great things that were going on, there was momentum things that were happening, but there was the development of guys that was so needed, and you're such a great asset with that. And when it come down to me making decisions about coming to Tennessee or staying in Hattiesburg, because we were straight torn, because KW was the best congregation that we'd ever been a part of. And but what it came down to, though, really was there was too much talent. And I felt like that we were holding the kingdom back by us alternating preaching. Now, there's benefits for that, but I did feel like that that there was too much talent at KW, between me and you, to the point that I felt like that the work needed to be going on somewhere else too. And so as you think about that, that's a big challenge, but really every one of us have to make that decision. The reason why a congregation is dying is because of you. And the reason why a congregation can thrive is because of you.
Amen.
And that's and so when you think about John 12:24, I want you to look at that one with me.
I can't. I know what 48 says. I know.
I'm sure you can quote John 12:24. But when you were talking just a minute ago, this verse hit me in my mind, and I think that this is what everybody needs to think about this. But Jesus said, "Most surely I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain." And that's what has to happen, is that every, we want to feel good at the PTPs with all the head of grain together,
right.
And everybody's together. But unless each one of those grains actually die, you gotta right. Die to yourself, right? Deny yourself.
Right.
When you die to yourself and you give up something greater, Jesus gave that perfect example. That's what He did.
That's right.
Think about where He was. He was in heaven, and He left it to come down here to die.
Yeah, in a cesspool.
And then look at what was produced because of it.
Yeah, and that's the blessing. Like when we have our staff meetings on Tuesday mornings, and I was talking with the.
You think they're going to be 45 minutes and they're 4 hours, right?
Well, Tom was gone to Alaska, and Chip and everybody, so. Like the last Tuesday morning when we had, I was like, guys, we got to order some lunch or something. This is. We're 6 hours. We didn't charge
been together in 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. The TV's overheating over here, that we put up. But like when we were talking, I was like, so do you guys want me to start preaching every Sunday? And they're like, they all jumped on it like that. No, and I was like, well, y'all jumped on that pretty quick, and
right,
and their thoughts. I understood what they were saying, is that they were just saying that it's just too much of a risk. If you turn it into I don't know how to say this, but a regular preacher, you feeling like you're
not evangelist. Yeah.
Yeah. You feel like you're doing the right thing with just preaching good lessons. And while we appreciate the lessons that you preach, it's like you will start to validate. Maybe I shouldn't say validate. Maybe that's a good word. Your approval, subconscious approval, will go to the fact that I'm spending this time studying my lessons. I'm spending this, do whatever the case may be. And it's just too much of a challenge. So they, we how we do here with one of the men teaching on Wednesday nights, and I just sat down and wrote down a list of guys, and so now we have one different man preaching each Sunday, and Ben preaches one Sunday, and Ben's doing a great job with it. I mean, he's
and it's a blessing, when I get to pick up the crosswalk, and then I go, okay, well, Chris preached last Sunday. Let's see who's preaching this Sunday, and then I'm seeing Ben or Colby or Joey, and those different guys, and then it's like that's what it's all about.
But it's a blessing, because we were talking about it this weekend. I want it to be a blessing when the church gets to the point to where they're not saying, I wish Chris would hurry up, because I want to go beat the Baptist church to the buffet, but I need to make sure I catch that visitor over there. I need to make sure that I'm gonna talk to so and so about this Bible study we got going on this week, and what a blessing that'll be when you want to hurry the sermon up, because you're not trying to get to the buffet, but you're trying to figure out how to beat the bush.
Bring somebody to the buffet.
Yeah, amen, to the feast. Right, exactly. Yeah. And it's a blessing. There's just I don't know. You just see those things, and like you realize a blessing that you've got, and so we're just thankful that we can be here and that you can be there, and I think you're right. So
and it brings about challenges. There's it's hard to leave a thriving congregation.
It is.
It's hard to leave a congregation where those people have been your family for 7 years. I mean, Chris, it took us 4 weeks just to be able to start reading the cards from people.
Right.
Because without crying. And then you start reading one, and it's like, I remember the first time that whatever, and it's like you just start squalling again. And so you just, let's table the cards for 2 more weeks. And this is a great way to start off our next series of podcasts, and what a blessing that division can bring unity. And so can we put a pin in it right here, and then absolutely. And that's a unique thing too with our kind of perspectives. Chris is at a thriving congregation, and then every congregation can get better. KW has flaws, we all know that.
Most of them are me.
And but then we're in a rebuild status, and so we can talk things from different perspectives, but it will I think that hopefully our listeners will appreciate it, but you need to change the battery pack on your on your camera, so this is a good time to quit. So anyways,
we'll see you guys next time.
Sounds good.
Love you, buddy. See you.
Love you.